So, in this assignment, we're supposed to talk about our passions. And while I have many passions, I would say that one of my main passions is missions, and especially God's mission. I have done a lot of mission trips in the past, and after graduation, I'm going to continue to do missions, possibly career missions. When I think about missions and mission work, I think about the word impact a lot. Impact that events and experiences have had on me personally, and impact that I've seen um, God working through me on other people that I'm working with in missions. So in this video, I'm just going to share a few stories about impact that I've experienced and seen God working through ESL in missions together for his kingdom. So the first story is about Zoha. Zoha was a camper of mine a few years back at our camp in Poland where we teach English. She had been there a few times before, and this particular year, she came to camp and she arrived on the first day, and she just latched onto one of our counselors, our American counselors. Um, and she was crying and she was distraught, and we did not know what was going on. And she wouldn't let go of him, and she just needed consoling and comfort. And when we eventually got to a translator where we could sit down and have a conversation with her, she had explained that there was an explosion in her apartment building that summer, and that she was in the apartment during the explosion, and it was a very traumatic and scary experience for her. And she had been living with her grandparents, and during the event of the explosion, her grandpa had been sleeping on the couch, and he may or may have been not have been drunk. And so this was just a very scary experience for her, and she knew that some of her neighbors had passed away during this explosion. And so she just had questions, and particularly for that American counselor, she wanted to talk to him and ask him those questions about what happened to those people when they died. Where did they go? What happens when I die? Where do I go? And so we were able to engage in this missional spiritual experience with just this 12-year-old girl. And we were able to see the impact of relationships that that particular counselor had on her in the past 3 or 4 years that she had been coming to that camp. That she came and she had a target person that she knew, I can trust you, I have a relationship with you, and I want to talk with you about my questions about God. So that's the story of Zoha, and it's very obvious that there was a connection of impact for both the American counselor and the camper in that moment. The second story is about Florentina and Antonia. These were two other campers at our camp in Poland. They were twins, and they came to our camp in 2011. And when they came, their father came with them to register them. And he had explained that he had just gone through a very, very rough divorce with his wife. And his daughters were very distraught by this, and they were just emotionally disturbed by everything that had been happening at home, and confused by the separation of their parents. And when he came to bring them to camp, they didn't want to leave. They didn't want to stay. They didn't want their father to leave them. And so after a while, they kind of warmed up to everything, and they were able to stay. But every single night, they called their father, and he had to come and pick them up and take them home. And they wouldn't want to stay overnight at camp. And this happened for about a week, and the camp is 10 days long. And the father, they were from Germany, and so the father had been driving from an aunt and uncle's house that was from a neighboring country over 100 miles to the camp every day to drop the girls off and pick them up at night because they didn't want to stay, because they wanted to be with their father. And so this happened for about a week. And after 5 or 6 nights of this happening, they finally came one day. And at the end of the day, they called their dad and they said, "Don't come get us. We want to stay." And so it was through the work of the Polish counselors and the American counselors working with these girls, building relationships, helping them to make friends with other campers, that they were able to stay at the camp, and they liked it. They had so much fun, and they were able to learn about Jesus in that time. So those are just two amazing stories from the past decade of mission trips to Poland that I've been on, that show real visual impact of God's mission, and how me and others that I've gone with on this trip can be God's vessel and be his light to these campers that we work with. And while we're teaching English and sharing God, we know that we are building these relationships and having a very, very powerful impact on others. So to wrap it up, the thing I'm most passionate about in ESL is missions and building relationships, and having impact be a part of those two things is essential in working for God's mission.